Hi everybody. I've met most of the people in the room. If I haven't, my name is John Downs. I have the honor and privilege of being the 7th head of Millbrook School. In short, I want to just say welcome. Thank you for being here for this moment. The gentleman in the class of 1971 had a vision to honor someone who's very special in the lives of so many of our in our alumni body, and that vision is realized here in the lobby of Hamilton Math and Science Center. So that's how I have to say about that. I want to say welcome, and I will turn to a legendary science teacher of the here and now, Alan Toussignon, who's been here since 1984. And I'm very fortunate to say when I was a boy at Millbrook School, he was my advisor. So I turned to Alan.
You guys are a little intimidated. It is my pleasure to be able to say these few words. And then we'll have lots of opportunity after to talk to folks much more knowledgeable about telescopes than me. Also, Rep. Roback, who is a master of restoration. But anyway, hello everyone. I'm very excited to also welcome all of you, members of the classes of the early 70s, especially the class of 71, the Howard family, and students who from the outset benefited from Neale Howard's excellence. Whether your involvement was through the sciences, community service, as part of the family, or all of the above, thank you for being here. As the zoo director, I am perhaps a bit of an oddball to be introducing this event, but I have a long history with the telescope. As the old observatory began to fail and there was little interest in preserving it in situ on campus, I suggested that we clean up and exhibit the telescope right here. Lesson learned. I am confident that I undersold the project, and it didn't happen. Fast forward to the class of 1971, and Henry Roust, Jeff Chester, and Jim Cannon especially, and others who saw the state of the telescope and jumped into action to preserve this important history. What you are looking at is the result of their efforts. With the skill of Rep. Roback, class of 2004, the Millbrook School Neale Howard Telescope has been restored to its original condition for all alumni, visitors, prospective students, faculty, and community members to enjoy. Neale Howard was a paragon of science and especially interested in teaching science to young academics. And now his history and legacy can be known to and celebrated by all. Thank you to Henry, members of the class of 1971, and all of those who helped with and especially donated to this project. Daniel Cohen, class of 86, who coordinated the work here on this end. Rep. Roback for his beautiful restoration. And of course to Neale Howard himself, who started this whole grand adventure, and all of the students who over the years participated in the life of this telescope and astronomy at Millbrook. We look forward to this being a real beacon to reinvigorate astronomy at Millbrook as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Nancy Stahl, and I work in the advancement office. And I had the great privilege of working with the class of 1971 and with Henry Rust, who really was the spearhead of this project. Henry, you're hot, here you are. And he really got his class together, rallied, and we had gifts from people we hadn't heard from since they graduated. So I love the fact that this was such a catalyst for people to re-engage with Millbrook. They felt so strongly about it being here. Rep worked so hard, Dan Cohen, everybody pulling themselves together to make sure this happened. I think it was you, Pete, who asked me last night. Now, it's not going to move, is it? I want you all to know it is screwed into the ground, so it is not going to go anywhere. It's here for in perpetuity. So I think it's a great tribute to all of you, to the class of 1971. I just want to say, if anybody would still like to donate to this project, we're always happy to receive gifts, but they met goal. They met goal, they were wonderful, they said they would do it, and they did. So thank you all. I think we all have to get other places. We have lots of programs this afternoon, but Rhett is here, Henry's here, the class, and anyone who has questions can gather around the telescope and talk about it, and I know they'll be happy to answer anything. We also have champagne and some really wonderful creations by our catering department, and you have to come look because it's all around astronomy and really clever. So please raise a glass and enjoy, and thank you all so much for being here.
I was at Millbrook probably after Neale had his community service days. He'd been sort of shifted over to more administrative duties, and in meeting Neale's children, Jean related the story of always her father trooping around campus with his intrepid group of boys behind him, doing whatever needed to be done, whether it be the ski hill or the weather station or cleaning up the labs or chopping trees and building things like telescopes. But Neale, I never really had that much association with the astronomy, but Neale was incredibly important. And, I don't know, I had this story in my head. I don't know if some of you might remember a series called The Little Golden Books. There was a book called Toodle, where there was this little locomotive that wanted to grow up to be the flyer, but he kept running off the rails. And that was kind of me. And there was this kindly conductor named Bill, I think, who would always be there to direct Toodle back onto the rails, and that was Neale. So he was a very special man, and you know, he never really tried to tell you what to do or how to do it, but if you made up your mind to do something, he would help you get there. So he was the kindly conductor when I was here. So anyway, and thank you all for your support.
Jeff, speech.
All right. Like it or not. So Henry here is being very modest in his role in this project. The idea, I think, began when you and me and Carrie and Jim were sitting on your porch on a summer day in 2021 discussing our class and its reputation, which was kind of dicey. And we decided that it was necessary for us to do something to demonstrate not only to the school but to our fellow alumni that we could actually do something meaningful. And so the idea arose of restoring not just the telescope but the observatory. We did not know at the time that the observatory had been demolished. The site had been completely overgrown. There was basically nothing that we could do. But we did know or had heard that the telescope was somewhere. So when we came up here for our reunion in 2022, we got a hold of Dr. T over here, and he led us to this place in the woods where there was a tarpaulin. And we pulled back the tarpaulin, and it's kind of like in those crime scenes, you know, where they pull the tarpaulin back and there's, you know, like a skeleton. Well, that was kind of the way we found the telescope. But all the parts were there, and we knew that with the right amount of elbow grease and talent, that we could restore it to replace the bear that used to sit on this platform. Which, the first time I saw that bear, I was like, what's that doing here? It's a perfect place to put a telescope. And so the wheels turned, and a year later, I got a photograph that Henry sent me, and our wonderful restoration gentleman over here had done this incredible feat of bringing this telescope back, if not to life, but to a life of a sort of hereafter. Now, this all would not have been possible if it hadn't been for Henry's diligence in tracking down people that, you know, from all classes. I mean, you had people going back to the 1950s, I think.
Yeah, we have one response from
Yeah.
1950.
And which was when this was originally built. But Henry had this uncanny ability to track these people down. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. Okay. And spread the word that we were doing this project, and the support from other classes besides ours was really pretty overwhelming. So, you know, we've got Pete Hoyt over here. He was very gung-ho on the project. There were several people from the 1960s that I remember standing in here talking about putting the telescope on this platform. They wanted to be a part of that. So Henry's role is really pivotal in this. And for me, it's just wonderful to see this telescope back, at least to look at. I spent many, many very, very cold nights looking through it. And it really, between the telescope and Neale Howard's guidance, it allowed me to pursue a now 46-year career in astronomy.
Jeff, for those who aren't familiar with the history of this scope and how it came into being, would you give a quick thumbnail about it?
Well, I think the best thing to do would be Henry has written a book called Telescope Tales, which is basically a compilation of ideas, email correspondence, etc., for all the different peregrinations that we've been able to trace this telescope through. We know that it was rebuilt at least twice, probably 3 times. The mirror that's in it is not actually the original mirror. We don't know what happened to that. That was ground and polished by students in 1953. When I got here, there was a mirror that was not the original mirror, but it was essentially the same optics as the original mirror. And then somewhere, I think it was in the 1980s.
We don't know exactly when.
Yeah.
Sometime between 1971 when we left and 1974 when Paul Bowles-Bevan reopened the observatory. We're guessing that Neale, there was always a noted problem with the mirror not being that big a piece of glass. They couldn't figure out how to securely attach it in the base of the telescope. So if you did maneuver the telescope into an awkward position, the mirror would have a chance of falling out. Isn't that right, Peter? You had that experience. Our speculation is that sometime during the early 70s, some bit of mischief had broken the mirror again, and Neale, probably on his way out the door, probably personally found a manufactured mirror and shortened the scope to accommodate it, because he... Anyway, it's a story.
It's a story.
There are, for those of you who have not gotten a copy of the book, I have 30 or 40 more copies here. If anyone would like one, just let me know and I'll give you one. And also, the t-shirts you see around, there's a few of those around if anybody would like.
So that is, as best as we can tell, the history of the instrument and the history of astronomy at Millbrook up to the present. And I'm very happy to see that the funds that were not spent on restoring this telescope are going to go to a fund to hopefully regenerate an astronomy program here at Millbrook. One of the wonderful things about astronomy is that it is very much a participant science, and you do not necessarily have to have a PhD in astronomy to enjoy it or to do something scientifically useful. And training high school age people in the art of using telescopes and modern detectors and that sort of thing will contribute to the overall body of astronomical knowledge. And what most people don't realize today is that probably 25 to 30% of the information that is used by professional astronomers in their work is actually collected by amateurs. These are people who have telescopes in their backyards or what have you. So it is a very approachable science. It's a wonderful way to get kids interested in physics and other fields as well. So for me personally, it is just wonderful to see this where it is today, and I hope it's an inspiration for many people to come.
If I could take one quick moment, first of all, to say that we're really excited that Jonathan Howe, our current Science Department Chair and Physics teacher, will be teaching astronomy next year, which is very exciting. But I also, in the vein of this, continuing in the education of students, etc., would it be possible for any of the Howard family here to raise their hand, and so we could say hello to them? And
if I could add a word?
please.
First I heard about this project was when Henry sent me an email, what, a year and a half ago or so, asking, or telling me that he was planning to put together a book, asking if I knew of any photographs of my father that he didn't already have, and so on. And so and then he asked a bunch of questions, which I tried to answer as best I could. I was 2 years old when he started building his first telescope, the predecessor of this one. You can see that how long it has to be for that focal length. To get up to the eyepiece up there, you need a stepladder. If you move it around, you have to move the stepladder. What he did was, this is in the hillside in the pine forest above the, what we call the guest house. He built a four-sided platform out of boardwalks that you could walk around on, depending on which way the thing was pointed, so that you could actually reach the eyepiece. But you can imagine by looking at it to see how large the observatory, which you see on the shirt, has to be able to have it be able to rotate completely inside the observatory. So he took that flat space up above, which I guess had been an airport at one point, or at least a garage for airplanes, hangar. In any case, he got cinder blocks and built the format of the observatory. Got a silo from a silo company top to put on top of it, and then put ball bearing arrangements around so that the whole thing could be rotated and so on. Yes. It's all done with pieces of odd pieces of metal that he got from junkyards or from whatever leftover place it was. It was hard in the early 1950s to find the money to build a telescope. He got lots of free labor from the students to grind the mirror, which took ages. The mirrors are tremendously precise.
In 1966, the estimate was $500.
Yeah, about right. Fortunately, I was too young to have to do anything.
Or to be volunteered.
So, no, it's a wonderful thing. Then along came the Sputnik business and the Moonwatch program, and as Henry said, no, use that. A lot of the actual information that the professional scientists use comes from amateurs. In those days, they didn't have over-the-horizon radar, as I understand, but they did have a lot of amateurs who were willing to watch for the track of the satellites as they went over, but they had to know exactly where they were. So the Moonwatch program involved a lot of places that could very precisely say when a particular satellite was in a particular part of the sky. And the way they did that was to get a reel-to-reel tape recorder and turn it on. And they had a shortwave radio, and they turned that on and tuned it to the Royal Observatory in Toronto, I think.
Yeah, CHU Canada.
And it just goes beep, 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 30 seconds, beep, 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 like that. And then the students would be set out in a particular row so that each one would see a different part of the sky. And when the satellite went by, they would say, mark, sector 3 or something like that. That would go onto the tape recorder along with the exact timestamp. They send the whole thing off on a regular basis to NASA in Washington. And then they would use a supercomputer to actually track the precise track of all these satellites. The most important thing, or the most interesting thing that happened as part of that whole project was that the first Russian satellite that went up, Sputnik 1, disappeared when it ran out of fuel. The satellite 2 is the one that had the dog in it, Laika, I think that dog's name was. And they didn't know when it was going to re-enter the atmosphere, but they knew it was going to be soon. The Russian, we send up satellites that sort of go along the equator, more or less, right? But the Russians, launching from Kazakhstan, send them on a polar arrangement. So this satellite, when it came down, went from north to south. And when it entered the atmosphere, it burned up. And only 2 stations in the whole world saw it. One was Millbrook. Another one was in Kentucky. And he had the tape recorder on, and he had the radio on, and he had the students all looking for it, for each one. And because they didn't know if there was going to be anything, he had told them to look for meteorites or anything. And if they saw one, they could yell out, mark, station 2 or whatever. And so the tape goes, and I've heard the tape, it goes, mark, beep, 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 mark, like this. And then, holy cow! and a lot of other words that you would want to print. Because it was going across the sky from north to south like a burning airliner, somebody said, right? Leaving a great, huge, long, fiery trail. And that got the New York Times involved because they said that only the 2 stations had seen it, and they sent a reporter up. And they did a whole article about the Millbrook School astronomy program, and especially the Moonwatch program, complete with photographs of the students sitting freezing to death in their little chairs. So it's quite a saga, right?
And it was also written up in Scientific American.
Oh, it was. In any case, I wanted to just add that my sisters and I and anybody who knew my dad, we're all very, very grateful to Henry and to all the class of 71 and all the other collaborators, of whom I guess are many, right, who have ended up with 1, the book, and 2, this wonderful display. And we thank you very, very much.
I would love to hear if Rhett has anything to say about this project.
No, just well, I could say a lot, but I guess I'll try to be succinct and just kind of give you a description of getting involved in it and then basically what I did. I sort of was approached initially by Dan, who I immediately thank for his management throughout this project, for his coordination, for his archival work, for his pep talks, for everything. And he basically said, look, there's this telescope. Obviously, I knew about the telescope. Some alumni are interested in restoring this. Can you look at it and sort of give your opinion? And candidly, when I saw it, I thought, they really want to restore this thing? I, at the time, was not familiar with Neale Howard. I knew about my teachers at Millbrook, people who are inspiring to me. But as I started to hear about it, Dan said, let's look into it. I started to realize this was kind of an amazingly prized object that had been here for so many years, that so many people interacted with, that people built and then restored and then rebuilt and then broke, and that in and of itself, without even the story of Neale Howard, it was an object that to me represented the story of Millbrook, that represented students being interested, tinkering, and having ultimately a passionate teacher. I'm a Millbrook graduate. I love Millbrook. I can now just immediately point at him and awkwardly thank him. Alan Touzignan, who was a person in my life, like Neale Howard, who inspired me and got me interested in fabrication. But ultimately, I saw this thing. We started to realize quickly what had been changed over the years. Quickly, we realized some stuff was from, the late 80s. Some stuff had varied in pictures. A bunch of the tubes had been bent. And so I kind of went through this, and our first process with Dan is, and using a ton of information, of course, from Henry Rust, kind of all of us trying to figure out what do we have and what are we trying to achieve. Very specifically, my goal was to try to make it as original as possible. I wasn't actually interested in kind of the later modifications, even if they improved the optical performance. I wanted to build it as close to sort of 1953, 1954 as I could. The information on that specific scope is limited. There's a handful of photos, there's videos that we've all seen, but quickly Dan and I started to kind of create a plan and figure out, okay, we need a length in this scope. We're missing the eyepiece. We're missing the spotting scope. The diagonal is broken. And so I disassembled this entire scope, every part of it, and essentially have rebuilt, candidly, every detail about it. I'm not going to go into... I'll just go into the really quick general. The biggest things were the scope had been shortened. It's basically 10 feet long. It had been shortened to 8 feet. I immediately realized we want to re-lengthen it. So there are new tubes that are tapped and threaded in. The eyepiece had long since disappeared, and so I machined an eyepiece as good as I could that was similar. I looked at every possible photo, even down to the eye cup and trying to measure the radius sort of on the eye cup. So it's my best recreation of that. I can also confirm that the diagonal, the crosshair supporting the diagonal, as I was sanding it, I could see weld marks, and they correlated to this story that we've all heard about a certain someone tilting the telescope, perhaps the mirror falling through, breaking the diagonal, and perhaps breaking this mirror that we don't know where it went. So I cleaned all the tubes, redid all of that. The eyepiece also is not original. I machined kind of all the aluminum components, again, basically using footage from the film and a couple limited still frame photos to be as close as I could. All the existing kind of main parts are original. All this is original, and all these are new machine components duplicating as best I could. I literally spent multiple hours looking at a silo, the school newspaper, counting the teeth, drawing them, trying to be like, was this 86 or 83 or 88? I'm just going back and forth. So I could talk forever, but that's the general gist. I'm so honored to be part of this and to kind of continue the Millbrook legacy, something that has been so meaningful for me. So again, thank you all. Thank you to Dan, my co-conspirator. Thank you to Alan, and yeah, thanks everyone for supporting me.
How many hours did you
A lot. I work out of my basement, so this quickly became that thing that I woke up in the morning, walked downstairs, and then worked on all day and all night. The whole thing I sandblasted with walnut to kind of clear the paint off. I've downed everything. The bearings themselves have been flushed and re-lubed and have new Zerk fittings. In every way, it's functional and smooth operating. The only, I should note, modifications that had to be made because it's in a building are that it's locked. There's instead of having the electrical gear, there's a gear locking the main gear. And the mirror also has clips on it that we quickly realized we can't have a mirror that could move around as a display.
High school kids walking by every day.
Yeah.
When you went through this process, didn't you use the same metal fabricated place for some of the work that was done?
So we went to Gordon Anderson, who had done some of the machining work. He had also, I believe, these are aluminum cast rings that were cast in Poland, and we don't have literature, but he knew Stuart Anderson, the son of Gordon Anderson, had patterns from the same company, knew immediately, is like, it was the shop in Pauling that helped out. Many of you will know, and if anyone hasn't seen them, I love looking at the Millbrook School for Boys, you know, on all the, both marking the castings and how they're just lettered. We use that. Another thing that I think is kind of a funny thing are, there originally were 3 bearing blocks right here. One of them had been removed. I'm guessing either it failed or they just wanted a little lighter action. But of course, again, we wanted to restore this to original. And it turns out the same company is still in business. I didn't realize it when I was just looking at their design. I was like, this looks oddly exactly the same. And as you can tell, it's exactly the same, you know, 70 years later.
Consider the you as an alumni were involved in the completion of it.
Thank you.
Brilliant and beautiful.
Apparently 600.
I would also like to say that not only did Brett do the telescope, but he built the base, which is significant. And like Nancy said, this is not going anywhere. We're never going to tell the school where the access door is. So they can't move it. It'll be with the building forever.
Well, thank you all very much.